Hey guys, welcome to the Clear Path podcast. Today we have an episode for you on the Eastern Conference playoffs. I think personally, the Western Conference playoffs is way better this year, but we're going to cover the boring one first, the exciting one second. We have obviously the 7th seed decided in either conference. Sadly, the Golden State Warriors have been eliminated from the playoffs, as well as the Atlanta Hawks. They were both the 10 seeds, I believe, and so both of them have been eliminated. Officially now we can say that no 10 seed has ever actually made the playoffs. So that's an important note in case you care about basketball history or you're a history buff of basketball. But as far as it goes right now, the Eastern Conference, the only game left to play is the Heat, with Jimmy Butler, I believe, is injured with a MCL sprain. They don't really know what it is, but they suspect it's probably something with his MCL. Definitely not going to play the play-in game. Probably not going to play the entire playoffs, even if he gets back. But a really debilitating injury. I just want to hit on this game real fast, Jeff. We don't have to do too much on it. But what'd you think about that Philly Heat game? I felt like the Heat had a clear advantage kind of going into the later parts of the game. Batum really came up big, man. Like 20 points off the bench. He shot well, and he bought Tyler Hero in like the last couple seconds. I feel like this is what the Clippers really looked for him to do back when he was on the Clippers. He's a weird player. Like, I really don't know how to describe him. He's like really tall and lanky, but also he's really good at shooting threes. And I mean, that's why Charlotte paid him like over $100 million back in the day. And that was a total bust, like most of Michael Jordan's is. But still, just an interesting player. And he really showed out. And to me is the reason they won.
Yeah, I think it was close enough of a game to where I think you kind of needed that. I mean, like Philly wasn't going to win unless they had some boom, and okay, if that comes from the bench. Yeah, Batum's interesting because, clearly a gifted 3-point. Oh, I don't know. I don't want to throw around the word gifted too much, but an able 3-point
Yeah,
shooter.
that's a better word.
And he's kind of big. He's like almost big in the way that like Aaron Gordon is big, not quite that big, but it gives him the ability to make some good defensive plays in tight games like that. So good for them. And I think it's really good for, I just think it's good for the Sixers in terms of the series that you're going to get. And I think for Miami, it happens, just injury.
Yeah.
Unlucky.
And I think an underrated storyline right now is the amount of injuries we're seeing in the NBA already. The playoffs barely started, right? Joel Embiid, a little bit hobbled. I mean, obviously the injury was before. We have Jimmy Butler already injured. We have Zion Williamson already injured. Like, these people have played one game and they're already injured. And I think we can both agree the game looks a lot more physical, at least to me, even in the LA Pelicans game and the Warriors Sacramento game. I thought they just roughed each other up, to be honest, compared to what it looked like in the regular season. I think that's definitely a storyline to watch for me, is the injuries, especially in the Eastern Conference. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think injuries well, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I feel like the East might be built in a way where most of the injuries that matter already like happen pre-plan. I think the ones that are big off the top of my head are Giannis.
Yeah, huge.
I mean, I would say Julius Randle is big
Yeah,
in
he's
terms of that
huge.
it changes the Knicks, but I wouldn't say that I honestly think the opinion of the Knicks is quite high despite that. So maybe it doesn't affect
Yeah, I
them
think
as
the
much, but
Butler
it's still a
injury is
big
huge
injury.
too. Like, they have no
Yeah,
chance
I mean,
without Butler.
maybe they win against Chicago because it's just one game. The Heat could win that.
No, but they're not going to win the
yeah,
Celtics.
it kind of dampens the mood for the Celtics. I mean, I think Boston, Miami maybe would be an interesting series if Jimmy Butler was playing.
Yeah.
And not interesting in a way where like I would take the Heat, but interesting in a way that is not just some flat sweep for the Celtics. But yeah,
I think interesting in that, like,
he's
if they
not playing.
won game one, people would be like, oh, like the Heat might actually win this because like Heat culture and stuff. But like,
Yeah.
for example, if the Bulls end up winning and they beat Chicago in game one, nobody is going to be like, oh man, they can actually beat them. They just don't. Although I love Kobe White, check out our most recent film review, but still, it's not a chance. I guess we've gone to the 1-8 matchup. So the next would make sense is the 2-7 matchup. I think personally for me, this is actually the most interesting matchup, if I had to say. The Philadelphia 76ers versus the New York Knicks. Obviously, prior information going in, we know that Julius Randle would not be playing in this series. I believe Mitchell Robinson is coming back for this series, and they have Isaiah Hartenstein as well. They have a lot of big people. Also, I'm pretty sure OG Anunoby is healthy as well. So pretty much a full roster for the Knicks. Just as far as looking at the stats, the Knicks are almost undefeated when OG plays. They are really good since the trade deadline with him in the lineup. Obviously, he had the elbow injury, so they lost a couple games without him. Jalen Brunson, arguably first team All NBA, second team All NBA player, carrying this franchise without their two, you could call them stars, I guess, like pseudo stars is probably what I'd call them, in Julius Randle and OG Anunoby, and Dante DiVincenzo having an excellent season from three. I think he shot like the fifth or fourth most threes this year or something like that. And he's making them at like over 40%, which is just insane. And then Josh Hart and the Villanova squad kind of going ham on defense. I have a couple worries about this team, Jeff, but I want to know what you think about this matchup. Clearly, I think the Knicks are favored right now, at least by the sports books, but what do you think?
Are they actually favored in the sports books?
I think they are.
Like,
I don't know.
the
I'm pretty
series?
sure they are by the series. Let's see. Let's check out our sponsor, DraftKings. But what do you think about the matchup overall?
Well, I mean, I think I would be surprised if they would be heavy favorites. I mean, I feel like the Sixers, I guess, displayed like the, you know, highest operating level of their offense pretty early in the season, and were doing it for a pretty consistent stretch. I don't know how many games it was before Embiid got injured, I believe, by our very own Jonathan Kuminga. But I think before that injury, that was a long enough stretch to prove to me that like Philly's, you know, still at that level, which means to me, I mean, I don't know if it's like clear cut favorite, as in you wouldn't give New York a shot or anything, but I feel like if Philly's operating at the level they were in like the first half of the season, I would put them as like, I would choose them. I wouldn't call them like heavy favorites, but
Yeah, I
yeah, I
think
would choose them.
just to reflect back on the earlier question, I think they're actually like almost even odds. I think it's like minus
Yeah.
105 for Philly, so slight favorites, but essentially even
Mhm.
odds. And I think this really reflects the look at Jalen Brunson that people believe around the league. I feel like this series is a referendum on Jalen Brunson and a referendum on Tom Thibodeau for me. Just look at Tom Thibodeau's past. He really wears out his players in the regular season. I think we saw that this season with Josh Hart and Miles McBride playing 48 minutes in a couple of games, which was kind of insane. Like, I mean, you try to kill people out there, I feel like at that point, like, come on, man. They ended up
Yeah.
beating the Warriors doing that actually, which was kind of sad. But still, it was just like he's really playing these guys heavy minutes. I do worry that they've had a lot of tread on their tires, but I do think that should have built some defensive tenacity. I feel like the Knicks have to win game one or game two, or at least ideally both of those games if they're going to win this series, because I feel like Joel Embiid is going to go on an upswing throughout this series. And I feel like Jalen Brunson should be hitting his groove right now. I feel like running them is going to be kind of the way they win. They do have very good guards to guard Tyrese Maxey. I feel like the 76ers
Yeah.
offense flows through Maxey and Embiid. And if they can stymie Maxey, then Embiid is going to face a lot of bodies. I think Mitchell Robinson is probably one of the hardest people to score against in terms of he's just a huge body and he's going to present problems for Joel Embiid.
Don't forget Hart,
Yeah. And Hark is good on the offensive
Warriors,
end.
future Warrior.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think so at this point. And he looks pretty good on the Knicks. So I think he's going to be staying there for a little while. But yeah, I mean, he's been incredible for them. And, you know, I think everyone's really liked the performance of the Knicks overall. The question is, superstars win championships. We all know that. And the 76ers clearly have a superstar in Joel Embiid. Is Jalen Brunson kind of that super type star to kind of match him is really my question. And that's where this series comes down to. What about you? What do you think about
Yeah.
that kind of matchup there?
Yeah. I really like New York's like athleticism this year.
Yeah.
I mean, like not just this year. I think you could probably say a similar thing last year, although they had slightly different personnel. But like, if you remember quickly, yeah, I feel like New York's athleticism and New York's defensive tenacity with DiVincenzo, great point of attack, great with screens. Um, Josh Hart, extremely athletic. OG Anunoby, long, good perimeter. I feel like they have a very strong defensive unit, and I think Philly has a extremely strong offensive unit, and if not, you know, a combination of like the unstoppable modern offense, like, you know, the modern offensive scoring package that you want. If you think of like Steph Curry, 2016 Warriors, and James Harden, heliocentric Warriors as like this first evolution of like 2010s offenses, then maybe the next one that we're currently having is these two gigantic centers that, you know, can run with the ball, make good passing decisions, score at all three levels. And then you combine that with a super athletic guard that's great in pick and roll, that is also a three-level scorer,
Mhm.
that is a great three-point shooter. And that's what Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid are right now.
Mhm.
And that's what won them so many games, I think. And that combination, get along with Kelly Oubre. Great season for Kelly Oubre
Yeah,
Jr.
except getting hit by a bike
But
or something. Yeah. Besides that,
yeah, got hit by a
yeah,
bike, had a,
kind of weird. Like
extremely
kind of
athletic,
sus, actually,
amazing
honestly. But
piece.
yeah,
Yeah. Amazing ad this year.
yeah.
But anyway, those two are just, that's like the top level of modern NBA ideal offense, right? Like it's like, Jokic, Murray, Maxey, Embiid, and then theoretically, maybe not as quite as much this year, but Dame, Giannis, like these types of combinations where you have an unstoppable 7-footer that can score like a guard, but cannot be defended like a guard.
Ultimate mismatch.
That's why I just think the 76ers are probably my favorite. I think if I had to pick games, I don't know. Like, I feel like this could easily go 6 or 7 games.
Oh, it would definitely go 6 or 7. There's no question.
I just think, right. Yeah. Because, I think, the style of Embiid's play, especially like I've mentioned before, I feel like it can lose you playoff games or not lose you playoff games because
I just think there's going to be games where they don't
he
call
gets you in foul
fouls,
trouble.
and then they're just going to be like, Embiid's going to lose. Like those games, Embiid cannot win. And I feel like this series, if it's short, it's going to be short because the Knicks end them, or because Embiid gets injured. And if Embiid gets injured, the series is over.
Oh, yeah.
Over. But I just think everyone, like, everyone's going to be standing on their toes in Philadelphia when they see Embiid hit the ground like for the 30th time in a game, and he looks like he's in pain. Like it's going to be kind of annoying for Philly fans, honestly, to watch, because I think Tom Thibodeau is going to say, like, be physical with Embiid. Like, I think that's going to be their plan. If we wanted to talk a little bit of X's and O's, I think a big part of the New York Knicks plan is likely going to be utilizing Jalen Brunson and trying to switch him on to Tyrese Maxey and have him go one-on-one. I think we're going to see a lot of matchup hunting in this series. And I think Tyrese Maxey, he's not the best defender in the world, obviously. Jalen Brunson, on the other hand, is a better defender than I think people give him credit for. He's obviously very short and he doesn't have much size, but he is very tenacious. I'd kind of compare him to Steph Curry in that way. He's probably better, honestly, than Steph Curry on defense, just because he tries so hard. I think that Villanova great really gave him something. So I think that's a matchup to watch out for a little bit. But I think for me, this is the most exciting series. And I think I have the Knicks in 6. I think they'll win it in 6.
Knicks in 6?
Yeah, Knicks in 6. Kind of rhymes, so might as well pick it.
Knicks in 6. I don't know. I feel like I'll take Sixers and I'll take Sixers in 7.
Sixers and 7. 76ers and 7, you mean?
The 76ers in 7. I think that the Tyrese Maxey experiment started this year and was a success this year. So let's ride that in and probably lose to Boston or something. But
yeah, we'll see.
That's my pick for the series.
But all right, we'll move on to the next series then. I think this series has gotten a lot more coverage than I thought it would, honestly, just because of the Giannis injury. But obviously the Bucks facing the Pacers. I think this is an interesting matchup. I believe the line right now for the Bucks versus the Pacers still favoring the Bucks, if I'm correct. At least in game 1. I think in game 1, actually, the Pacers are favored, it looks like. And in the rest of the games, it looks like right now the Bucks are favored. I think that's probably because Giannis isn't playing, and we also don't know how he's playing. So honestly, the odds probably don't matter too much, except for game 1 where the Pacers are favored. I think a lot of people have said, obviously, the Pacers have had the Bucks number this year. They've played like 5 times, I think, because of the play-in tournament, not the play-in tournament, the in-season tournament. And the Bucks have lost almost every time but one. I think for me, playoff basketball is different, and I really expect the Bucks to win because I don't think fast pace wins in the playoffs. I think that when you start to get somebody like Damian Lillard in and he starts to control the pace, I feel like the Pacers will struggle to deal with that. And also, I think seeing a team 5 times at least, basically in a row, makes it so that you get used to their pace and also that they get tired. I think that the
Yeah.
first round though definitely benefits the Bucks because you have the more days between every game than you do in the other rounds, which I think is an important point to note. Just because they are an older team, they probably need a bit more rest. There's going to be no back-to-backs essentially. Sometimes there's going to be 2-3 days between games, a lot of time to strategize. Obviously, Pascal Siakam did not actually play in any of the games before, so I think that's like a trump card on the Indiana side. But I think overall, I think Dame will elevate his level of play. I think Brook Lopez is going to be a rim stopper in this game. And I think that Chris Middleton and plus the addition Bobby Portis, I think will help to control the pace and really make sure the Bucks strangle the clock. I think though the Pacers will definitely get 1 or 2. So I'd have to say probably like 6 games,
Yeah.
but that's my initial impressions without Giannis. What do you think about the Bucks without Giannis? And then we can talk about with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, it depends how many games he misses for me that would actually change my prediction.
What's that point for you?
I feel like 3 would probably be okay. Now I might change, but
Okay.
like 2, I view it as 2, you can give up 1, and then another one you can probably ride with. I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking about like what is the theoretical playoff ceiling of like Dame, Brook Lopez, Milton. And yeah, I think 2 games is the most I'd be comfortable with letting Giannis out, and then I would still pick the Bucks. And then even with if let's say he was out for 3, I would still probably pick the Bucks. But obviously you have to be careful. I think the number one thing for me is like initially, start to the season, the Pacers were like selling out to stop threes.
Yeah.
That allows teams with big size and length to destroy you, both on board, well, mainly on boards in the interior. And that's how Milwaukee was able to beat them the few times that they did this
Yeah. The
season,
one
is
time they
because
did.
of
Yeah.
size and what that generates for you. And, I guess it'd be interesting to see if if Pascal Siakam changes that
Dynamic.
equation a little. Very long, bigger, pretty good defender. Um, I think that is probably the most interesting thing is if the Pacers have figured that end out or can with Pascal Siakam, because I think otherwise, I think that similar to what I was saying earlier, I think that in a slowed down, more half court setting, the Giannis Dame combo um, poses too many problems for Indiana's
Yeah, I think
defense.
I think clearly the Giannis Dame combo poses problems for every defense. I don't think there's any really way to really defend that well. I think if we're just looking at the Giannis list, the thing I do worry about is Dame is a certified playoff performer. He hasn't been that great this year. I think everyone would admit that. He's been below his regular season usual shooting average from 3. But I think in the playoffs, he's really going to ramp it up. And I think on the opposite end, Tyrese Halliburton, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury for a long time now. I think that
Yeah.
it still affects him. His points per game have dropped. His assists per game have dropped a little bit. I think that his inability to kind of be that superstar is really going to hurt this team, the Pacers specifically, because he is such a big hub and everything goes through him. And he would need to raise his level of play to like an MVP caliber and instead of just like an all-star caliber, which is what I'd say he's playing like now. And I think that's really going to hinder this team, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think that some of this is a size and length mismatch. Some
Mhm.
of this is
Some speed mismatch for the other
Tyrese
side.
Halliburton, Tyrese Halliburton not playing as well recently. I guess since his big boom. And yeah, I mean, I think that given Indiana's finish to the season and given the personnel disadvantage, I would probably pick the Bucks in. Okay, so let's say Giannis misses 2. I'll say they split that. I think this probably goes 6 games. 6 games if Giannis comes back within 1 or 2 games, and maybe could go 7.
Mhm.
I think so. I think this is very, very possible could go 7. Like I don't think there's that big of a delta here. So
Yeah, I think it's possible. 6 or 7.
Bucks either way.
But yeah. Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next series then. I think this series probably gotten the least talk out of all of them. The infamous Cleveland Cavaliers versus the also infamous Orlando Magic. Now, I think nobody has probably commented on this series yet, even though I think I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting series, I guess,
Mhm.
kind of. I mean, just like, I feel like
Think
there's
so.
no like superstar potential, which is why it's not getting the hype it probably deserves. And a lot of people honestly don't know many players on the Orlando Magic. I'm just going to shoot some names out there so you guys can remember when your friends are like, hey, you don't know anybody in the Magic. Why are you rooting for them? You can be like, oh, I know Franz Wagner and Wendell Carter Jr. and Paolo Banchero and like Markel Fultz. And they're like, oh man, you pulled that deep out of your bag. So just remember those names. But overall, I think the Cavs have a significant advantage to me because of the Jarrett Allen um, piece. I think he's going to be a really elite defender in this series. He can match up well, I think, with Wendell. And I think that they have playoff experience and they aren't looking to lose again, and they have a big incentive to continue to try to win. I think Donovan Mitchell, hopefully, will be a big key. And Darius Garland, I mean, also pretty good. I think that these are the types of games where both teams struggle to score, so I feel like the team with the better defense then wins. And I feel like personally, the Cavs, although they have the less versatile defense, will have the better defense overall just because they match up well. Because Orlando does have a more versatile defense for sure. They have long wings and almost everybody can guard a guard on their
Yeah.
team, including Wendell. But the Cavs are positioned well in that they're very positional in their defense. They have Darius Garland who can really only defend guards, and they have Jared Allen who can really only defend bigs. And I think that this is a good matchup for them. And I think that the Cavs will win because of it. And also because I think Donovan Mitchell can get hotter than fish grease. And I think in these types of series, you look at like who's going to win games. So like I say Paolo's probably going to win them one game, and maybe Franz slash the others are going to win them one game. I could genuinely see Donovan Mitchell winning 2 games for the Cavs easily, just because he goes off for 40 one night and then 35 the next, and then Darius Garland plus Evan Mobley chip in for a third, and then you're just looking for a fourth game. So that's kind of how I look at it. What about you?
I think that the Magic have the stronger defensive unit actually compared to
Yeah.
the Cavs. I think that positionally in their front line, they're much I think they're more versatile. I don't think, I think that Cleveland definitely has the more dominant interior and dominant rim protection, but I feel like having such a ball hound like Jalen Suggs combined with, an interior like Jonathan Isaac,
Mhm.
Wendell is really annoying for this Cavs team. Um, I think that it's especially annoying. I want to give extra credit to Jalen Suggs this year because that makes it even more annoying, especially where teams that have, these 3-point happy guards like Mitchell, Garland are just a lot more annoyed when there's a 99% effort at all times guard hounding you over screens, just everywhere you try and relocate to. I think that the main issue for the Magic is just a really weak offense, really weak guard
Yeah.
offense,
Agreed.
especially.
Agreed.
Paolo's not quite versatile or talented enough as a scorer yet. I mean, I don't know if he will be, but definitely not yet.
Yet to me.
And I think that Suggs, I think we all like watching. If you like watching guard ball out, you like watching Suggs, Cole Anthony, Fultz. But none of these guards provide you the offensive ceiling that you need to truly dominate in this NBA. I think that the Magic is a great example of like an extremely elite defense. Doesn't quite have the guard talent, and their defense isn't quite dominant enough
Mhm.
to where you would pick them despite that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is not like the most. I think there are some defenses that teams that you would that hang themselves on their defense, and I think the Magic are one of them. I just don't think that the guard offense, especially, is good enough,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
and that makes this series annoying to
uh
Cleveland, and
yeah.
like a 6-game series maybe,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I
that's
think
my
you hit on the
case.
best points, and just to kind of narrow it down a bit, the Jalen Suggs versus Donovan Mitchell matchup is going to be key for this whole series. I think that will probably look like that the tide of the series will be very based on that matchup. I think if Donovan Mitchell is able to score 20, 30, probably 30 a night is probably what he's going to try to get to. I think the Magic really don't have a chance. I think you hit on it well with Paolo Banchero isn't that certified scorer yet. He's like a 20 per night guy, but we haven't seen him get to that 30 per night, which is really what they're going to need to win this series. Franz Wagner averaging 20 points so far this season, but they're a relatively like even scoring team. And I find that these teams usually struggle in the playoffs just because there's nobody who stands out and nobody who like is supposed to get the ball or like supposed to play in certain positions. And that really can hurt specifically in the playoffs. So I feel like you hit the great points, which is that Paolo will need to elevate his level if they're going to win this series. Jalen Suggs is annoying, but actually stopping a great offensive player is completely different than just being a good guard defender. I fully agree with you that he can be a good guard defender and he can make Donovan Mitchell second guess himself maybe. But for example, some of the best guard defenders have guarded Steph Curry, but he still made them pay with 30 points every now and then, you know, or 40 points, or even the Boston series when they won the finals. I mean, that was crazy run by him. So just it's great offense beats great defense any day in the league today. And so I think that the Cavs have the advantage on the offensive end, and the defense is as you said, like the Magic might be more elite in terms of like ranking and stuff like that, but I feel like the Cavs present a good enough defensive threat as one of the top defenses to still be a good defensive team.
Yeah, I mean that Cavs interior just makes things impossible for the way that Orlando wants to play.
On the
Very
interior
difficult.
they want to play too. So.
The issues with Evelyn Mobley's offensive ability and any limitations that the Cavs have will be exposed by more potent offenses in the next round.
Absolutely.
So I would take the Cavs probably in 6.
Yeah, I think I'd take the Cavs in 6 as well. I think that.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, I guess if we could go over them, Celtics, let's say Heat or Bulls, where you taking the Celtics
in
probably 4 or 5. Yeah, probably a sweep.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to bet a sweep, I would bet it on the Celtics.
Yeah, you might not get good odds
Cavs
though, honestly. You might as well bet it on like someone better. Like I feel like you get pretty good odds on like the Magic Cavs series, for example. If you think that the Magic are just a young team that can't really do it, I feel like that's probably the best series to do it, honestly. I don't expect any other sweeps. Or if you think Embiid's going to get injured, then maybe that series, but I don't know. Probably not.
No, I mean, I think that one's probably 4 games. I think Cavs Magic, that looks like a 6-game series. I think Bucks pay. I feel like besides the Celtics matchup, the other 3 are relatively like, I feel like there are favorites.
Yeah, but there's question marks.
Maybe the least so in Knicks Sixers. As the bracket advances, how do you see this going?
I mean, I think the obvious thing is I think the Celtics make it to the Eastern Conference Finals for me, right? Like, I don't think the Cavs or the Magic could beat the Celtics in their wildest dreams. So I think that's an easy Eastern Conference Finals for the Celtics. I think whoever wins the Knicks 76ers series will end up probably facing the Bucks. I think the Bucks will win that series. I think it'll be close. If it's the Knicks, I think it'll be a great series. If it's the Pacers, I think it will be like, I think if the Pacers beat the Bucks, then they'll lose the next round. So essentially, if I had to pick, though, my Eastern Conference Finals would definitely be Celtics, Bucks, and then I'd have the Celtics going to the finals.
Yeah, I think Celtics, Bucks. I mean, I might. I think I would give the Bucks and Sixers equal chance of making it out of the Eastern Conference. I guess the
semifinals
is called. Yeah, I guess I would give them equal chance of making the conference finals, and I would put the Knicks right behind them.
Knicks
I would put the Knicks
and then
behind
Pacers
them,
way
like,
behind
right
them, right?
them.
Like, you don't think the Pacers realistically have a chance. And I think everyone in the Eastern Conference on the Celtics side of the bracket has absolutely no chance. Like,
yeah, I mean,
less than 10%.
I think that's a good, interesting question with the Celtics is like, 64 wins is relatively rare in the NBA. If you look at all regular seasons, the last team that was like close to this was, not saying that they don't happen, but the Phoenix Suns back in 2022, 2022, correct?
Yeah, I think they lost in the finals though, right? That year?
No, they lost to the Mavs.
Oh yeah, they did. That's right.
Semis.
That was the year before when they lost to the Bucks in the finals.
I guess the meter that I'm asking is like, if you take the way that Suns team performed, how much better or worse do you think these Celtics are than that team?
Significantly better. I mean, I also think the East is just way weaker than the West. Like, I think if the Celtics were in the East, I mean, in the West, they would have a way tougher time. But like maybe that's a discussion for the offseason, but I just think that the the bracket is so one-sided. Like there's clearly no team that can really match up well with the Celtics right now, except maybe the Bucks. And the only reason they match up is because maybe superstars just beat like pretty good players type thing. So, and that's still a
Yeah.
hope and a prayer.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Celtics defense is just a bit too inevitable this year, like in terms of individual ability and also in terms of scheme.
Hmm.
I think it's probably the perfect marriage of scheme and individual ability that we've had in quite a while.
Hmm.
At least, maybe I should say the best example in the modern NBA, probably, of what you want in terms of your defensive makeup and what that immediately converts to offensively.
Hmm.
I would say that I would definitely bet the most on the Celtics to come out of this, but I'm not looking at this as like sweep, sweep, sweep.
No, no, they'll
I
lose
think
some games, maybe.
by the time the Celtics, I think maybe they could sweep both first two rounds, but when it comes to Celtics versus Bucks, Sixers, let's just say it's one of those two. I think that's 6 games. I think that's 6 or
I think it
7
depends on which
games,
one it
maybe,
is.
if they're
I think
playing
it
their
depends on which.
best.
I think they could sweep the
Which one do you
Sixers.
think would go longer?
Yeah,
Really?
because Al Horford is like the Embiid stopper, bro. Like every single time they match up, he's always worse. And if Embiid doesn't go for 40 in that matchup, it's over. Like their guard defense, like Derek White's gonna be hounding Maxey the entire time. Like, and he's gonna switch on to
Yeah.
Drew Holiday. Oh my God, so much better. It's like it just doesn't get good for him. And so it's just gonna be a really tough matchup, I think. I think they could get swept by the Celtics. The Sixers.
Yeah, I think the Celtics are just too inevitable of a
Yeah.
team to take down. I don't think though that they are. I don't think that they're so inevitable that they're like upset proof.
No, yeah, yeah, they're
I
not
think
upset.
that there have
They're
been
not the
teams.
like the Warriors. They're not the Warriors, okay? Like
Well, they're not. They're not. Well, they're not the Warriors, but I guess what I'm saying is they don't seem as inevitable as maybe even Denver seemed last year.
I don't know. Denver
I
didn't really
think
feel
Denver
inevitable
seemed like
last year either, though. I don't know. I think the most inevitable team though would be the Warriors. Like I don't know. It just felt like they were gonna win all
in
year, or
past
like the
years.
Cavs making it to the finals that same year. Like everyone knew the Cavs were gonna make it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Maybe that's a good scale then. So you wouldn't pin the Celtic squad as elite as whenever LeBron James would get the 4 seed, but everyone would know that they would make the
Yeah, I don't know
Eastern
if you can
Conference
pin
Finals.
that
Is
just
what you're saying.
because LeBron has like the pedigree, but Tatum doesn't. If Tatum had won last year or like beaten the Warriors in the finals that year, I
Yeah.
think it would be a different story. Like I think we would say this team is like the Warriors almost. Like we'd be like, this is over. Like they're gonna win.
Yeah.
But it's not like that because Tatum hasn't shown in the clutch, right? All right, guys, I think that concludes our Eastern Conference Spectacular. We kind of covered everything from each individual series as well as to our series predictions and inevitable who we think will win. So if we don't get back to you guys, hopefully we'll have another little kind of scrum here before the actual Eastern Conference Finals. But if we don't, you know our picks and kind of know where we stand. Expect the Eastern Conference to be relatively mild and kind of as to our expectations, but we're always in for a surprise with the NBA playoffs. And so let's get to watching the NBA playoffs. And thank you guys for listening.